Tonight, federal agents executed the largest coordinated raid on American soil in over 2 decades. $4.2 billion in seized assets.
At exactly 11:47 p.m., Federal Command authorized the largest coordinated infiltration breach on American soil in over 2 decades. Minneapolis, Minnesota, a luxury residential compound hidden in plain sight, over $4.2 billion in seized assets, 17 tons of refined cocaine, 900 kilograms of processed heroin, 2.1 million fentanyl pills stamped with cartel insignias, and a network so deep, so protected, so politically entrenched that it took 3 intelligence agencies, 2 years of surveillance, and 1 betrayal from the inside to finally crack it open. This is not about immigration enforcement. This is not about protests. This is about a shadow empire built on Venezuelan oil money, Somali organized crime, and a fictional governor who turned an entire state into a cartel-protected financial fortress. And tonight, you are going to see how deep it really goes. The raid begins at 3:18 a.m. downtown Minneapolis. The streets are silent except for the hum of distant highway traffic and the cold wind scraping across empty parking lots. Fog rolls through the alleyway behind a high-rise luxury building near Loring Park, where the windows glow faintly with amber light. This is not a typical residential tower. This is what federal investigators have been calling the bunker, a fortress disguised as condos, reinforced steel doors, bulletproof glass, private elevators that require biometric scans, security cameras covering every angle, feeding live to encrypted offshore servers, and inside, some of the most dangerous people have never heard of. At exactly 3:21 a.m., 12 black SUVs rolled to a stop 3 blocks away. No siren, no lights, just shadows in tactical gear stepping onto frozen pavement with the kind of silence that comes from years of training. ICE, DEA, FBI, DHS, SWAT teams from Minneapolis, and Federal Joint Task Force units. Over 200 agents converging on one single location. They move in formation, splitting into breaching teams, perimeter teams, and air surveillance coordinators. Above them, 2 Black Hawk helicopters circle without running lights. Thermal imaging cameras locked onto every window of the tower. The lead agent signals 3, 2, 1. The doors explode inward. Flashbangs detonate in rapid succession, turning the marble lobby into a disorienting storm of light and sound. Agents flood in like a black tide, rifles raised, voices sharp and commanding. Federal agents, on the ground, hands where we can see them. Security guards in expensive suits freeze, hands going up slowly, eyes wide with shock. But upstairs, on the 12th floor, someone is running. Agents breach the private elevator shaft and storm the penthouse suites. Inside, they find luxury that does not belong in Minnesota. Gold-trimmed furniture, Persian rugs worth more than most houses, walls lined with modern art, and framed photographs of foreign officials, businessmen in tailored suits, and one face that appears over and over again. Fictional Governor Roland Ashford, the man who has publicly called ICE enforcement inhumane and demanded federal agents leave his state. The same man whose encrypted signature is all over this operation. Agents push deeper into the penthouse. One room is filled with cash, stacks of $100 bills bundled in plastic, piled from floor to ceiling. Another room is a command center, monitors displaying live feeds from ports, highways, border checkpoints, and cargo routes across 6 states. Encrypted laptops still glowing with open spreadsheets tracking shipments labeled as agricultural imports, construction materials, and renewable energy equipment. But the real shock comes in the basement. Hidden behind a fake wall in the parking garage, agents discover a steel vault door. Inside, duffel bags stuffed with cocaine bricks stamped with cartel symbols, heroin bundled in vacuum-sealed packages, 2.1 million fentanyl pills in industrial drums, 17 tons of narcotics in total, stored like inventory in a warehouse, and next to it, stacked on metal shelves, rows of encrypted hard drives and banking ledgers marked with code names like Caracas Pipeline, Somali Trust Network, and Operation Frost Crown. One agent stares at the wall of evidence and mutters into his radio, "Command, you need to see this. This is not a safe house. This is a headquarters." By 9:00 a.m., the seized hard drives are inside the FBI's cyber forensics lab in Washington, D.C. Analysts crack the encryption within 4 hours. What they find is not just a drug operation, it is a continental empire. On the screen, a network diagram expands like a spiderweb. At the center, a fictional cartel coalition known internally as the Frost Cartel, a hybrid organization combining Venezuelan oil elites loyal to a fictionalized version of Maduro-era smuggling network with Somali organized crime syndicates operating across the Midwest. Shell companies registered in Dubai, Panama, the Cayman Islands, and Delaware. Fake nonprofits claiming to support refugee resettlement and migrant aid. Luxury real estate firms that launder money through property flips in Minneapolis, Chicago, and Detroit. Logistics companies moving humanitarian supplies that are actually cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl. Restaurant chains, car dealerships, construction contractors, all feeding cash back into offshore accounts controlled by one man, Governor Roland Ashford. His digital signature appears on encrypted authorizations for border crossing schedules, security stand-downs during convoy movements, and financial transfers to Somali crime bosses operating the street-level distribution network. He did not just look the other way, he engineered the infrastructure. He turned Minnesota into a protected hub where federal enforcement was publicly resisted, where local police were strategically defunded or redirected, and where cartel operations could function with the efficiency of a legitimate business. One FBI analyst leans back in her chair and says it out loud. This is not corruption. This is command-level collusion. He built them a fortress. The lead investigator stares at the screen and nods. And we are about to tear it down. By 5:47 a.m. the next morning, a federal command center inside a fortified warehouse on the outskirts of Minneapolis is fully operational. A massive digital map covers the wall, glowing with over 80 red markers spread across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio. Each marker represents a confirmed location tied to the Frost Cartel network. Luxury condos, trucking depots, cargo warehouses, massage parlors, and nightclub fronts, underground gambling hall, human trafficking transit houses disguised as immigrant support centers, and dozens of cash collection points feeding directly into Ashford's shadow finance system. The operation is codenamed Iron Thaw. Over 1,200 federal agents, 47 SWAT team, air support from 6 Black Hawk helicopters, and 2 U.S. Navy surveillance drones repositioned from Border Patrol duty. Armored units rolling in from Fort McCoy and regional DHS staging areas, and legal warrants for over 90 suspects, including 17 sitting city officials, 8 state legislators, 12 senior police officers, and Governor Roland Ashford himself. At 6:03 a.m., the order is given. All teams execute. Across 5 states, the raids begin simultaneously. In Minneapolis, agents storm a luxury car dealership that has been processing cartel cash through fake vehicle sales. They find $14 million in a hidden floor vault and arrest the owner, a Somali businessman with direct ties to the bunker network. In St. Paul, SWAT teams breach a warehouse registered as a food distribution center. Inside, 300 kilograms of methamphetamine packaged for street distribution, along with encrypted phones and ledgers tracking deliveries to Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland. In Duluth near the port, agents seize a cargo ship carrying containers labeled as industrial machinery. Inside the containers, 1,000 kilograms of cocaine hidden in false panels, along with falsified shipping manifests signed off by a corrupt harbor inspector now in federal custody. In rural Wisconsin, agents raid a farmhouse that turns out to be a human trafficking way station. 32 women and children are found locked in basement rooms, some held for weeks, some trafficked from East Africa under false promises of asylum and work. The cartel used them as leverage, as labor, and as cover for drug shipments moving through migrant aid networks. And in downtown Minneapolis, at the state capitol building, federal agents walk through the marble halls with arrest warrants in hand. Governor Roland Ashford is taken into custody in his own office. No cameras, no press conference, just federal agents, handcuffs, and a man who believed he was untouchable. By noon, the results are staggering. 17 tons of narcotics seized, $4.2 billion in assets frozen, 93 arrests, including the governor, 8 state legislators, 12 senior officers, and 47 cartel operatives. One federal agent looks at the live feed from the command center and says what everyone is thinking. The underworld just took more damage in 8 hours than it has in the last 8 years. But the deeper investigators dig, the worse it gets. Inside the seized servers, analysts find something that makes even seasoned agents go quiet: internal police logs, patrol schedules, border checkpoint duty rosters, and encrypted messages between high-ranking officers and cartel coordinators. They were not just bribed, they were embedded. Over 40 officers across Minneapolis, St. Paul, and surrounding counties were on the Frost Cartel payroll. Some were paid $10,000 a month to falsify patrol reports and avoid certain neighborhoods during shipment windows. Others were given luxury vehicle, offshore accounts, and real estate in exchange for tipping off cartel leaders before federal raids. One deputy chief in Minneapolis personally altered security footage to help cartel members escape arrest after a violent turf shooting. A Border Patrol supervisor in northern Minnesota received $200,000 to approve truck convoys without inspection during late-night crossings from Canada. A county judge dismissed over 30 drug trafficking cases in 2 years, all connected to cartel defendants represented by the same law firm, which was secretly funded by Ashford's network. This was not a few bad apples. This was a parallel enforcement system, a shadow police force designed to protect the cartel, not the public. One honest sergeant, a 22-year veteran who had been raising red flags internally for months, sits in a federal interview room and finally breaks. I knew something was wrong. I knew. But every time I tried to report it, I was reassigned. My cases were taken from me. My emails were ignored. And then, one night, someone left a note on my windshield. It said, "Stay quiet, or your family learns what happened to Officer Ramirez." Officer Ramirez had died in a car accident 6 months earlier. It was ruled accidental. Federal investigators are now reopening the case. By the end of the week, 12 more officers are arrested. Some are taken from their homes, some are pulled from active duty shifts. One lieutenant is arrested while giving a press conference about community policing. The badge is being rebuilt from the ground up, and the public is starting to realize that the protests, the outrage, the political theater, it was all part of the cover. But the Frost Cartel was never just a Minnesota problem. Investigators zoom out on the map. The network stretches across the Midwest like a spider web, with Minneapolis as the anchor. Trucking routes move drugs from Minneapolis to Chicago, where another Somali crime cell distributes to street gangs. From Chicago, shipments move to Detroit, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. Fake renewable energy grants funded by shell companies tied to Ashford allowed the cartel to purchase trucks, warehouses, and logistics hubs under the cover of green infrastructure development. Agricultural inspection stations were shut down for maintenance during convoy window, allowing tons of narcotics to pass through unchecked. Shipping manifests were altered at the port in Duluth, where cartel-linked import firms brought in industrial parts that were actually cocaine bricks from Venezuelan smuggling routes. And the human trafficking network ran parallel to the drug routes, using migrant aid organizations as fronts to move people across state lines, some for labor exploitation, some for ransom, and some simply discarded when they were no longer useful. At the peak of the operation, the Frost Cartel was moving an estimated 12 tons of narcotics per month across 6 states without triggering a single federal alert. Because the alerts were controlled, the checkpoints were compromised, the enforcers were paid, and the governor made sure federal agencies were publicly vilified, legally blocked, and politically isolated. Inside one of the seized hard drives, analysts find a file labeled Phase 3, Continental Anchor. It is a long-term plan to expand the network into Iowa, Indiana, and Missouri using the same model. Infiltrate local government, compromise law enforcement, establish shell companies, turn the Midwest into a permanent cartel-protected corridor where enforcement is impossible and profits are guaranteed. One FBI investigator reads the final line of the document and feels a chill run down his spine. Minnesota is not the target. It is the blueprint. This was never about one state. It was about redesigning the system so the cartel could operate like a legitimate government. By the time the final arrests are made, the cost is undeniable. Over 11,000 Americans died from fentanyl overdoses in the Midwest last year alone. Countless lives destroyed by heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine flooding into communities that had no idea they were living inside a cartel-controlled zone. Families torn apart, neighborhoods abandoned, trust in law enforcement shattered, and behind it all, a governor who smiled for cameras, condemned federal enforcement as inhumane, and quietly signed off on the largest narcotics pipeline in the northern United States. The story is fictional, but the warning is real. Power does not always need violence. Sometimes it only needs silence, ambition, and the right person in the right office at the right time. Because when you control the law, you do not need to break it. You just rewrite it. And that is exactly what Governor Roland Ashford tried to do. If you are still watching, tap like so more people see this story. Comment expose if you want corruption like this dragged into the light. Share this so the truth does not stay buried. Because the next fortress might be in your state. The next bunker might be in your city. And the next leader standing in front of cameras calling for compassion might be the one signing the shipment logs in secret. Stay awake, stay aware, and never forget, the most dangerous empires are the ones that look like governments.